Hey guys, Big Wheel Dog 82 in the soil. I've noticed a trend in my garden, and it kind of relates, actually it majorly relates to my compost and the way I make it. Now, if it wasn't for, in certain case areas of my garden, where it becomes a very, very good thing, it's sort of kind of become a bad thing as well. And I'll explain this as we go along. But I usually make 2 piles every year. And in those 2 piles, I will add, my typical mix would be the horse manure that I pick up from a real nearby source. I will use grass clippings. I also use leaves, coffee grounds from the local coffee shops around here, and then I also add a microbial and fungal package with biochar and other things in it, all into the pile. Now, the problem stems with, in the beginning I thought that when I was picking up the manure from my source, she was saying that, listed it as horse manure. And horse manure isn't necessarily as nutrient dense as cow manure. But I knew she had cows, and although I biotested everything that I use in my compost before I put it in there, I never noticed any issues. Well, come to find out, recently on my last pickup, it's actually a combination of manures. It's actually horse, cow, and chicken manure with their bedding, and most of that is either sawdust or it's pine shavings. That changes the scope of things, and this sort of kind of leads to the benefits and also the cons of the whole thing. So let me back this up. Every year in the fall, I will go ahead and lay down an entire wheelbarrow full of compost into my raised bed. I will then top off my wicking tubs with a combination of compost and some Pro-Mix. And then with my containers, I will use about the same ratio, which is typically like a 50-50 mix of Pro-Mix and compost in all of them. And then for my one in-ground garden bed that's on the side of my house, I will typically put down probably about an inch layer of compost, followed by an inch layer of leaf mold. And doing this, I actually get different results in all of these different areas if you wouldn't believe it. So with my main bed, which is my raised bed that I put my tomatoes in every year, I typically will put fertilizer down into the hole, just like sprinkling of it at planting, along with some bone meal and my own worm castings. And then typically for the last 2 years, no, not really the last 2 years, this last year, I would go ahead and add a little, give it some liquid fertilizer along probably about this time of year, maybe a little bit later, and it'd be fine. And I wouldn't really have to water it all that often unless we have an extended dry spell, and I wouldn't have to feed anything else. Well, this year I put in, I think it's about 9 plants into a 3 by 8 foot bed. The bed's probably about, I don't know, a foot deep, and that's kind of tight. And I've got 4 indeterminate cherry tomato plants over there. I've got 3 indeterminate beefsteak tomato plants over there, and 2 Roma plants that are in, well, 1 Roma plant and 1, what is that? It's another paste tomato that I'm trying out for this year. Anyways, we've got all of that in that bed. and I have not had to water or feed it this year, and it's green as ever, fruits everywhere over there. I will show you that here in a minute, but follow along here. 9 plants in a 3 by 8 foot bed. That's kind of tight, wouldn't you agree? My side bed over here. One, I planted all of it. The biggest one I planted with just green beans. And the smaller one, I planted with just peppers and onions. I had 6 onions in the big one and 4 onions on the side in the smaller wicking bed. I did feed a little bit of nitrogen to the onions early on because they need it as a boost early in the season, and it's way too cold to put anything in it over there. So I figured that stuff would be used up, maybe recycled in the water a little bit, but it would still be there to some extent. Then I did something stupid when it came to the warm season. I went ahead and put 5 pepper plants into that small container. 5. With the onions that are still growing in that tote. And the other one, I did put, I think it was like, I planted 16 green bean seeds into that, and I think about 14 of those sprouted. Once those green beans sprouted, I noticed that those leaves were huge. I mean, huge. I have some over here in a green stock that I planted also that were not that huge. Then, later on in the month, those leaves continue to stay huge. And then the peppers, they just kept going. They're greening up, they're getting tall and luscious, and I'm looking around and I'm like, wait a minute, my tomato bed is doing awesome. I barely fed it. My green beans are going crazy over there. My peppers over there are going crazy. Those two things have a secondary thing that I kind of alluded to already going on, but we'll stick with this for this video. And then the side bed over here, which is on the south side of my house, it gets maybe 6 hours at the very longest day of sunlight. I'm growing cantaloupe over there. Cantaloupe. I grew some kohlrabi over here, and it did not bulb. All it did was have these nice big green lush foliage, but it never made a bulb on it. There's the problem. When it came to, I watch a lot of other gardeners' lives, and so I asked this question on Gardener Scott's video. And I said, I can never grow kohlrabi. I mean, they grow nice and green and lush, but they never bulb. And the thing he said to me is, you probably got too much nitrogen. Too much nitrogen. I don't add any more extra other than my granular, and I use compost. Everybody says compost is very low in NPKs, supposedly. So then I stopped to think. That's when the whole, it's not just horse manure. We've got horse, cow, and chicken manure all in there. My compost, when I build it, not only do I add tons of grass because of all of the pine shavings and the sawdust that's in there, and that horse manure, as far as I knew, had hardly, not nearly as much nitrogen in it as, say, like I said, cow and especially chicken manure. I added that. Plus I've got a small pile, kind of. It's just barely at that 3 square feet size. So it tends to sometimes run a little cool and slow. So I bump up with a lot of grass, and I don't add too many leaves. And it finally gets up, and right now it's running at 140 degrees. But once it goes down, and then I mature it, I think I found my problem. Let's go over here and take a look at my finished compost that's in the trash can and is now maturing. And I'll show you what I mean by the woody material and how you really can't see any of the greens that I put in there at all. This here is my container for storing finished compost. In order for it to mature, it's typically a trash can of some sort with holes on both the bottom as well as the sides for both the worms to migrate and for airflow. I have 2 of these right now, and after upgrading my compost bin, it's gonna need 2 more, maybe one, maybe 2. As you can see, there's still some fibrous brown material that's mostly carbon rich and takes time, soil life, and fungi to continue its breakdown. The part you can't see that goes a long way towards the subject of this video is that all that carbon rich material is holding on to much of the nitrogen that was added to the compost. It's tied up in there so that the breakdown can continue by microorganisms contained within. But what happens to all that nitrogen and how is it important to my case? Let me sit back on the porch and I'll explain. Those pine shavings, those sawdust from the bedding for the cows and the chickens and the horses, the leaves that are in there, any stems that I threw in there from the last season's harvest or just trash that I was going to compost, it's holding on to all of that. All of that nitrogen is being sequestered up into all of that brown material, and it doesn't disappear. It doesn't disappear at all because the microorganisms need it to break down, and then the fungi come and they break down all the left of the woody material once all the grass and the coffee grounds and everything are pretty much spent. But I forgot the very valuable lesson that nitrogen just doesn't stay there. It gets re-released back into that compost. Right here is a prime example of what I'm talking about. All this is Pro Mix, my compost, and it sat for probably about a month, just mixing and getting all friendly with each other. But now that it's growing something, these leaves are massive. I mean, this is my first time growing cucumbers, and I don't remember these supposedly being this big. Even this is a sugar baby watermelon, and I've got sugar baby watermelon growing right over here, and its leaves are nowhere near this huge. I'm assuming this is the nitrogen coming into play, but it still looks like there's buds coming up. So while there is a lot of nitrogen in my stuff, because it's being packed so densely, there's 4 plants, 2 watermelon plants and 2 cucumber plants in this one bucket here. It's okay because it's not taking up more than it needs, but we are still getting the result of huge leaves that concerned me at first, but now that I've seen how it works, does it, because I've learned how to work with it. And finally, this is the end of July here. We're getting ready to go into August, and I just wanted to show you how dense we're talking about these plants are, that I'm not having to water or feed. And it's kind of nuts with the amount of fruits that are on them right now. You can see these are way past needing to be picked. And like I said, in front, it looks like it's a little bit, undergrown, but these are determinate tomatoes and they are starting to ripen up. So pretty soon, all of these will be into a pot, cooking down into sauce, and enjoyed over the winter. After all of that, all I'm trying to sit here and tell everybody is nitrogen can be both your friend, but it can also be your enemy. And if you're not paying attention to how much of it is in each one of your components, or if you're not sure and you're going based off of a guess, you might find yourself in a situation like mine. But now that I know, I know that I can continue to just keep doing what I do in my main raised bed because it seems to be working just fine. I'm getting fruit. It's not like I'm over lush and overly green and nothing as far as anything edible is growing. It's perfectly fine and happy. Just like my peppers. They're nice and tall. They've got peppers all over them. My green beans are nice and big and they're growing just fine. But some of that stuff, like my cold weather stuff, that's the first thing that goes into any of the pots or anything like that. That's where I got my problem. Too much nitrogen. I'm not getting any bulbing from my kohlrabi because there's too much nitrogen. So now that I know that, from now on, I've got a brand new game plan. Use my spent soil from the past season. Nitrogen should be pretty much either used up or washed out by then, and any that's left in it should not be a problem. Before I forget, there's a book that I wanted to mention that sort of kind of helped take my compost game from here to here. And that book is called Composting Masterclass by Tony O'Neill. And Tony, if you see this, brother, that book almost exploded my brain. But after sitting down with it for a little while, I started to understand exactly what's in that book and all the information that you took the time to put to pen. So, for those of you looking for a super deep dive, super detailed look into the world of compost, check out Tony's book. I also keep it on hand, which is kind of what I had to do, go back to it when I was trying to figure out what went wrong or right, I guess, depending on how you look at it, with my compost. Now I realize that I haven't really gone too deep or in detail on what I do with my compost and how I built it or how I typically make it. So if you're looking for that information, I actually have done a video, and it's actually in the Impaired Gardener series on my channel. It's in a playlist, and there I sort of kind of go through the details of how I build or develop my compost. So it's broken up into two separate parts. The first part has to do with just me going and getting my horse manure from the source, which we now know is a mixed manure. But the second part is the actual building and putting into the pile and getting it going. So all that information is there. Please watch both parts, or just take what parts of it you need. And other than that, that's all I've got today. I'm so glad you guys have made it this far, and if any of this helped, or if any of this sparked any kind of thoughts in your head, please write it down in the comment section. Remember, I've got links to the videos that I mentioned, as well as links to both Scott and Tony's channels, as well as links to both of their books. Please go support these guys. They're awesome individuals and awesome gardeners, and I've learned so much from them. So, Big Wheel Dog 82 in the soil, and I'm out of here, guys. See you later.